All right, and we're recording. Okay, great. All right. I'm very pleased to have Ola Giwa here with us today. She's based out of Chicago, and she's a data analyst and web developer, and she's also co-organizer of Our Lady Chicago. And I've known Ola for a couple of years, and I'm really excited to have her here because, as you meant from the job title, she's in both worlds, right? She's in the R and data science world. She's in the web developer world. She's familiar with JavaScript and all those tools. And for me, from the more the data science perspective, I always find the other side kind of bewildering, right, to kind of tackle on. And that's one thing, having known Ola for a couple of years, that she's willing to dive into anything, right? And so she has a really unique perspective, having covered such big ground, two huge fields. It's hard enough to know anything about any one of them, much less both. So I'm very happy to have Ola here to teach us about D3. So welcome, Ola.
Yeah. Hey everyone. I'm glad to be here and I'm like smiling a lot, so don't be afraid of my smile. It's just nice to see everyone. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, and then I am going to present. So my talk today is D3 for our users. A couple of months ago, John told me about this new package called R2 D3, and I googled it, and then like the Star Wars little bot always popped up, and so yeah, so that's why I'm here to talk about the package. And well, John already introduced the main points of who I am, and forgot one major aspect. I am a My Little Pony fan. Friendship is magic. So, with that being said, let's learn together. So yeah, the agenda for today is I'm just gonna talk about what is D3 and then what is R2D3, the building blocks of D3, D3 workflow um, in relation to R2D3, and then some resources so you guys can learn after this talk. So, right. So what is D3? D3 stands for data driven documents. That's why you have the D and the 3. D3 allows you to make highly customizable interactive graphs. So here are a few examples. So this is a ClearPath graph that is made with D3 and it's interactive. There's like little pop-ups and stuff here. Uh, there are like real advanced ones that you can make. So this data visualization is about Ben and Jerry's ice cream. Uh, and you can see it's complementing the story that this person has. Oh, and I guess before I forget, I should gonna stop sharing. I'm gonna send you guys my slides so you can look at the interactions more. And
Oh, if you wanna, you need to share it with make the link public. So you don't have to do it now if you don't want.
well, is we're gonna. Oops. I guess I could share the data visualizations. I think that's um and then this one. And then this one is example 3. All right. Share. And this is example 3. This is super advanced. I really like this website called Pudding that cool. And this is a interactive data visualization of every line in Hamilton. If you scroll around, you can see pop-ups of the line and who said it. And if you scroll down the page, it like reforms, the data visualization reforms itself. So these are the crazy things that you can do with D3. I am not going to show you how to make this particular graph, but I can show you the basics. And D3, even though it's really cool, it has a really high learning curve. So like in order to use it, you got to know the basics of HTML, you got to know the basics of CSS, you got to know the basics of JavaScript, you got to know how to create like a mini server on your laptop. It's just, it's a lot and it could be daunting. So the good thing about R2D3 is that this package abstracts a lot of those things for you. And the only thing that you really need to focus on is D3 and the D3 API. And so I'm going to go on a limb here and say that a lot of you are familiar with ggplot too. And so like the building blocks of ggplot, I know there's 7 layers in the grammar of graphics, and there are 3 base layers. So you need your data, you need your aesthetics, and aesthetics is how the data is going to map to your X, your Y, your size, and your colors. And then you have your geometries. So this determines whether you're going to make a scatter plot, a line plot, or a bar chart. And this is kind of similar to, you can take that philosophy into D3. D3 creates data visualizations by using SVG, and it stands for scalar vector graphics. And so the thing with scalar vector graphics, as you can see, like if you use JPEG or GIFs, if you increase the size or decrease the size of a regular raster graphic, it can get pixelated, but vector graphics, it's usually crisp and clean. And so there are certain SVGs that you can use to create graphs. So there's a circle, which is you can make scatter plots. There's a rectangle where you can make bar graphs, and there's a line where you can make line graphs. So I guess you can think of these as your geometries if you're coming from the ggplot background. And this is an example of a ggplot making a scatter plot. I just took this random example from the internet. So this is your data. Your Y is going to be structured at cost. Your X is land dot value, and then the geom point is where you make your scatter plot. And so I guess I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but this is how you make a graph in D3. So you have this thing called a SVG, and think of SVG as your canvas. As you know, you're an artist, you have a blank sheet of paper or canvas, and you can just throw anything that you want onto this canvas. And so it's usually the same steps. So you have your geometry, which is a circle. Then you're going to have your data, and your X and your Y, you're going to use scales in order to map your data onto the SVG canvas that you make. And these are attributes of your geometry of your circle. So R is saying like, okay, I want this radius to be 1.5 pixels. Fill is saying like, okay, I want the circles to have this color, this hex color. And so the normal workflow of D3, first you need to access the data. Then If you're working with regular HTML, CSS, D3, you create your chart dimensions. The good thing about R2, D3, you don't have to worry about that. Your chart dimensions is based on the viewpoint. Then you create your scales. The scales help you map your data onto the SVG canvas. Then you draw your actual data. And then the rest are, peripherals. That's your x-axis, your y-axis. This is optional. And then you can set up interactions. So how with the other graphs we saw, you hover over like a point in your graph and you can see like a pop-up, or if you hover, you can just change the color. So that's last. And this workflow is based off of Amanda Wattenberg's book, Full Stack D3. And so this is a picture of a scale. I'm going to think it's better to show than to tell. So I have some examples. Okay. All right, so I guess I will share. I'm going to share this with the. So this is the R2D3 website. I'm going over the example that they provided here. So in order to use the library, like any library in R, you have to load it up. So load up the R2D3 library. And then I have this argument data, and data is the data coming from R. Right now it's a vector, and then script is a JavaScript file that is used to create your visualization. So if I run this, you see that a bar chart popped up. And if I increase it, you see my SVG, the height and the width matches the viewpoint, the container here, the viewer. And so let's dive into the JavaScript. I just want.
Ola, real quick, could you zoom in on your RStudio so it's easier?
Oh, yeah. Which one? Oops. Oh. I don't think I can zoom in. Let me.
If you do the view, if you can't remember the I can't remember what the keyboard shortcuts are, but if you do the view at the top of the menu bar, you can zoom in.
Oh, I see it. Okay. Yeah.
All right, much better. Thank you.
Yeah. And so this is the example that they gave in the website. Bar height. So height is automatically given to you, and the height is based off the container that you have here in the viewer. Data.length is the length of the vector that you gave in R2D3. And so as I stated before, SVG, this is your canvas. And so we're going to give it our geometry rectangle. Then we're going to give it our data, which is the data that you pass into our R2D3 function. Enter and append that's a D3 thing. And then your attributes are for your rectangles, your SVG rectangles here. So it's saying, okay, the width of this rectangle is going to be the data times the width of your container. And the same thing, the bar height is space of here, your variable here. And then the y is where each bar is positioned in your visualization. And so, okay, this is the index. So at 0, the bar height will be at 0. At 1, the bar height is whatever is calculated here, and so on. And then the fill is how you color your bars. So if I want to change this into, I don't know, pink, save it, and then I'm going to rerun it. It changes it to pink. And so this is from the example. I have another example that we can
real quick, although that the comment at the top, is that is that for RStudio? Like if you press preview, will it run it? Because that special syntax, you see the preview at the top of the code to the right.
Yeah, so these are my notes. So
okay, so that's not something special. Like what, I'm just curious, what, there's a preview button at the top right of the editor. Like what does that do?
oh,
Yeah, but yeah. Like is it smart enough to read out of there the data? That's kind of slick.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. I didn't notice that preview button. So if you put in viewer browser, it's just gonna pop up into your browser with the server localhost. And let's see if I can inspect. This is on Explorer. I'm not gonna put in my Google Chrome. Yeah, so, and it allows you to inspect your data visualizations inside of a browser. So, and I know we can have fun with it, make it green. All right. So I'm gonna get out of here and I'm just gonna open open. All right. Us. So, and open. And so the cool thing about R2D3, you can integrate it with other other parts of the R ecosystem. So markdown files, you can embed your data visualizations in markdown. So this is what we have before. We call in the library and then call in R2D3 in the script. And if we run this, it's embedded. And we can also, there's other variables that we can put inside of the function, R2D3 function, like color. So if I want to make this orange, I could just put it inside of here in the options. And now my visualization is orange. And you can also use R2D3 in Shiny apps as well. So I have another visualization that's a little bit more advanced. I'm going to create a scatter plot. So here is my R file. I'm going to load the JSON Light library. And I am download. You know what? I did not need to. So this is a CSV from somewhere online. I'm going to run it. And we can view it. Yeah, and so the CSV has 2 columns, sales price and area. And I'm going to run the R2D3. So my data is X, and the script that I have is scatter.js. So run it. And this is my scatter plot. And so are you able to see this? Or should I zoom in? Okay. And so this is my scatterplot.js. And so this is my X scale. So the domain, the input is my data. So the smallest input data that I have in my data set is 0. And the largest is 4,000. And then the range is the canvas. So I want to transform 0 to 4,000 into my canvas. So it's a mapping. And the same thing with the y-axis. So my smallest column value in my y is 0, and my largest is 50,000. And it's going to go from my height to 0. And then I'm going to create my circle plot. So my SVG, my canvas, I'm going to say like, hey, I want my geometry to be circles. Here's my data. Okay, bind my data. Next, append my circles based on my data, and map my X and my Y based on the scales that I declared before. And I want my circles to look like this, and my radius to be 1.5. So if I want to make my circles bigger, I could just change it to 3.5, and I can rerun this. And now I have bigger circles. So I know that was a lot. Any questions?
So the X and Y above, are those like functions?
Yeah. So the X and Y, these are D3 functions. And I can go back to my data, my presentation. So this is the input. This is the actual data. So in here, they have the minimum data is 0, the maximum data is 20. And so it's saying, okay, I'm going to map these values onto pixels. The range of my pixels on my canvas, my SVG canvas, is 0 to 400. And so It's like, okay, like for the number 5, the pixel could be 150. If it's 10, then the pixels could be like 350. And so that's what the scales are doing. And that it makes it easier to understand how D3 works. Um, oh, and then these are the arguments for the R2D3 functions. We looked at a couple of these already, but yeah, so going to the basic bar graph. So this is what they provided in the example of the website, of the R2D3 website. And I just didn't find that useful because, you know, in most cases, you're not going to manually create a function to figure out how to map my data point onto a canvas. So that's what the scales are for. They take all the guesswork for you. And there's different types of scales. Since my data is linear, I use the linear scale. But if you're working with time, there's like a time scale. If you're working with the logs, there's a log scale. So, and you can also integrate CSS into R2D3. I have an example of that. So here's my styles.css. I have a rectangle and I wanted, I guess we can, what's an other, we can make it red. And then this is the basic bar chart. And so we can just add the argument CSS and then the name of the file, style.css. And then we can just run it. And now instead of blue, my styles are red. So it gives you a lot of flexibility when it comes to making these visualizations. The only drawback to the R2D3 website is that it's kind of hard to debug because it's not in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So they have to work on the debug messages in this package, but it gives you a lot of flexibility. And I like the fact that you can just focus on actually understanding D3. The D3 API, it's pretty big and it's pretty intimidating, but as long as you understand like those fundamental steps, you'll be able to get it. Yeah, and then here's some of the resources that I like. I really like Amanda Wattenberg's book, Full Stack D3. As a good start. There's also D3 in depth. It's free, and it breaks down the fundamentals of D3. Also, like D3 gallery. I'm always on here, and it gives you examples of D3, and so you can literally copy and paste this code into R2D3 and start playing around with things. And then if you want to play around with CSS properties and SVGs, and you don't know what types of properties that they have, there's a whole list of properties that you can look at. like font styles, if it's text, color. And then I also have a Coursera, I have a project. So if you have like 2 or 3 hours to mess around to learn about D3, you can take my course. But yeah, that's all that I have for this presentation. So I don't know if anybody has questions, or do you want to see me translate a D3 graphic that I find online onto R2 D3? As choose your own adventure.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, let's see if people have questions first. But yes, I kind of like the idea of a choose your own adventure. That seems exciting.
Does D3 offer animation, and can you give us a simple example of that?
I can find a example of it. Just trying to find a simple example. Okay. Yeah, so if I refresh this is an animation. So when it first renders, it pops up. So let me see. You can probably copy the script. And try to put it here. No, it's not an art script. It's D3 script. All right, I'm just gonna put it in my Visual Studio Code. It's more home for me. So this is animation. And so this is the first part, defining your canvas. You don't have to do that in R2D3, so I'm gonna comment that one out. I'm gonna delete this because SVG automatically comes with R2D2. So I don't need to, yeah, I don't need any of this. So I'm gonna comment that out. And yeah, I'm gonna comment this out too, because this is reading in the data, and we read in the data in R. So I'm gonna comment that out. And so this is the X, this is our X scale. It's using scale band. So let's look at this data. Let's do. Yeah. So we have country and we have values. And so a country isn't a numerical data. So we can't use scale linear like the one that I used before. So that's why they use this other scale called scale band. And then this will help map the data onto our canvas. And then this is our Ys are numerical, so that's why they use scale linear. And then we can just do rect. So SVG, and then we're going to draw data. So this is a genome rect. This is our data, and we're going to append it onto our CSV bandwidth. And then this is the animation. They have this function called transition. That's why you see it took some time to load. Yeah. And so it's saying like, okay, wait 8 seconds to draw this plot. All right. So hopefully this works. Live coding, as always, never know what you're going to get. So two, three. All right, so let's read in our data. And then hopefully this works. Okay, and it says it's not found.
You just got to put quotes around it.
Oh. Yep, and the animations work here. I'm very surprised about that.
Cool.
I can put that example in the repo. Any more questions, or I can freestyle it?
Yeah. Anyone else? I have a question, but I don't want to. I've been asking lots of questions. Anyone else have a particular kind of plot they'd like to make with D3?
I have a question. Hi, Hala. I was wondering if you pull up the D3 viz, like open this in a browser, the one you just created.
Oh, okay.
I just want to see how R2D3 is transforming the data, because I don't always know what like the best data structure is. So I think if you on the viewer pane, if you hit, yeah, you see the viewer pane, right where the brush to clean up the objects are, just to the right of that, yeah, that'll open up. I think it'll open up in a browser. Perfect. Now, could you inspect this for me?
Inspect.
Perfect. Now, I think in the console, you should be able to access the data. And I think it should just be called data, right?
Are you trying to find the CSV file or?
Well, I'm just wondering, like, okay, so you have the CSV and then you send it to R2D3, and then R2D3 converts it to some JavaScript object, right? I was wondering if we could see what it ends up looking like. You know, in terms of like what kind of data structure do they use to best work with R2D3?
Yeah, they have to come up with better.
Yeah, I
Can you
think if
scroll
you,
through the whole thing? Can you go scroll from the bottom to the top of the script?
Yeah. And this looks like um just a D3, like the actual D3 library.
Mhm.
Oh, so this is R2D3 rendered that
Yeah.
it's there.
Yeah, and could you, if you go to the console, yeah, I'm pretty sure you should just be able to type data and get it back. Maybe not. Okay.
Well,
All right. Yeah, never mind. Maybe it's not straightforward to get. I was just curious how they handle it on the JavaScript side, because a data frame in R, we all know what that looks like. What do they use on JavaScript is kind of what I'm curious about.
yeah, even in the Chrome.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess the index that's generated is kind of complicated. Usually when I'm trying to debug a D3 document, the index is what you write, right? So you could just put a breakpoint and then kind of inspect your stuff. But I think you mentioned before they had to improve their debugging a little bit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So I'll go ahead and ask. So let's say like on your scatter plot, so you had two numeric columns. Let's say you had a third column that was like labeling all of them, and you wanted to make that a tooltip that when you hovered over it, it would show something about it, right? How hard is that? Is that one line, two lines? Like how hard is this? Is it a dot tooltip? Put this column and it'll just add it to all your points. How hard is that?
I'm gonna Google that. Let's Google the question. I've done it like 1 or 2 times. I don't think it's too hard. I'm probably gonna go back to a visualization that I did a while back. Day 7. Yeah. So in order to create a tooltip, so I actually had to create like a div in the actual index.html file, and it just had to be in like a position absolute. And then how did I? And then yeah, in order. Okay. So yeah, I remember. So I had to create a div in the index.html file. I gave it an attribute, a style, so it can be placed anywhere. And then I gave it a class of tooltip, and also gave it an opacity of 0. So it's always there, but I'm like, okay, I just want it to be hidden. And then when it's time for it to be shown, I changed the opacity up to 1 so it could be there. And the animation transition, so wait like 2 seconds and then increase the opacity. And the style is like where the X and Y of the tooltip will show, like right next to the circles that I made here. So that is not easy.
Yeah, that answered my question. Okay, so it's not just one additional little add this column. That was my hope. Very cool. Any other questions?
We're done in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I can go over resources that might be good, like after, after this meetup, you can check out.
Yeah. Why don't you show a few more, then we'll call it.
Yeah.
Call it up the hour.
Yeah, so like I said before, I like D3 in depth. It gives you like a solid introduction. And then you can get crazy if you want. It shows you how to create like force layouts and stuff like that. Really good YouTube, John. Yeah, Jonathan Samoa. He is a lecturer in somewhere in New York, in Brooklyn, and he has a lot of good tutorials, especially on his YouTube channel. I have a blocker because I have a YouTube problem. I'm addicted. It takes a couple seconds.
And yes, I'll post all these links to the meetup page as well.
Okay. Yeah, and so he has tons of videos, like how to make a map, how to make a bubble chart. So he's a pretty good person to follow. And yeah, and then the D3 gallery that I showed you before, it has really good examples, so you can copy paste from there, and so you can just have a feel for D3. Okay, so thank you for coming to my talk. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks so much, Ola, for sharing with us.